developing today. Fury that Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Archie and Lilibet have been put at the centre of King Charles's new funeral plans.
Let's break this all down, because a reaction to a new leak about King Charles's funeral plans has seriously set the royal world on fire. So, here's a headline that's got everyone worked up.
Sparking huge debate across the royal world. Obviously, there are lots of folk who say, of course, Harry was always going to be there. Of course, he was going to be at the centre of the plans. He is Charles's son. Others not so keen, though. Lee Cohen, good friend of Outspoken, royal commentator. Not, no, hell no. Those vile creatures must be forever marginalised. And can you see why there is that level of feeling, given this was how Prince Harry revealed his dad's declining health to the world in that despicable BBC interview? So Brittany, Brittany from the Royal News Network joins me now, and I'm going to take you through these astonishing details from this leak to the Daily Telegraph in just one moment. But from a big picture, Brittany, can you understand why a lot of monarchists are horrified about this? King William, as he will now be, is going to be having to deal not just with Harry that day, but also Meghan, his arch rival, let alone his niece and nephew, who he has had nothing to do with. I mean, this is incredibly awkward, and it's sort of on Harry, isn't it?
Well, this is not in some ways a surprise, because obviously Harry is Charles's son, so he was going to have a role in the funeral. And beyond that, though, it's definitely a bit of a question. And in that actual interview, in that actual article, it talks about how Charles is hoping that this will be some sort of reconciliation moment between his sons. And I'm like, I don't think that's probably going to be the place for it. And I don't think William is going to be all that interested in Harry at that point. We've already heard that William is basically not even considering Harry anymore. He's totally out of his mind, and he's moved on. And so I think in many respects, like, the big question becomes, like, why even try at this point? It's going to be William's future, and Harry and Meghan have no part of that. They have no part of the monarchy, neither do their children. So why even be all that? In some ways, I think the danger is giving Meghan Markle an inch, she'll take a mile. Like, don't let her get too engaged in this idea that she's still somehow relevant within this institution, and Harry as well, because they definitely will obsess over it, and Catherine and William just want to move on at this point. So I understand where Charles is coming from, but there's also major problems he could be setting up as well.
Brittany, let me be very clear on this. There is no way Meghan Markle deserves to be at Charles's funeral. She accused him of being a racist, for God's sake. At some point, don't we just have to draw a line under constantly bringing this woman back into the fold? And what is it about funerals and the royal family? It's like, it didn't work with the late Queen, with the reconciliation at that funeral. It didn't work at the late Prince Philip's funeral either. It's like, this is not a moment of reconciliation. And actually, William doesn't want a moment of reconciliation.
Yes, it's very much Charles putting his desires on his sons. And at this point, once he's gone, I would imagine that rift is just going to get worse. And so what is the point? And let's be honest, too, when it comes to Meghan, the only thing she's wanted from Charles ever is his money. And so the only reason she would be interested in even attending is if she can either make money off of it, or if Charles does leave them a couple of pennies, that would make her, I'm sure, fairly happy. But other than that, Meghan does not care about Harry's family. She's proven that endlessly. And her just trying to be there, and you showed a picture of her doing the little, like, this very deep curtsy to the Queen. And it's like, oh, come on, you never cared. It's a farce. And that's what it is. Meghan's going to try to act like, oh, she's still regal and royal, but we all know it's just farcical at this point, especially now. And so it's like, why even try? I mean, I understand from a family perspective, I understand this Charles's wishes, but in many ways, that ship has sailed.
Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and even their kids, Archie and Lilibet, are reportedly being included in official funeral plans for King Charles. Not just as quiet observers, not just as family in the back row, but front and center.
It absolutely has sailed. And I mean, the idea that Harry and Meghan are going to expose their two children to the world at King Charles's funeral, when at this point they're not even prepared to properly show their faces on social media, is also laughable. And it proves why the situation that they've created is laughable, because Harry still has this ludicrous bottom line, which is that until I get the security in exactly the way that I wanted, I'm never going to bring my wife and my children. And of course he would have security at the king's funeral, but it's not the point, because everything for him is making a political point. So yeah, Charles is offering up the olive branch, but it's still highly likely that it would be Harry attending on his own.
It would be, although I could see Harry and Meghan at that point being willing to show the kids. But one of the things I've always thought for Meghan and why she's so careful about not showing too much of the kids is that, in my personal opinion, I think she is not that much of a parent to them. And so in some ways, I think the concern for her would be is that her children would act out and they would not act as regal as I would say the Wales's kids do in that particular situation. And she wouldn't be able to control her kids. And that would be her biggest concern, I think, because she's so consumed with having the perfect image as a mom that she doesn't actually allow us to see her being a mother. Because for us to see her being a mother, we might see the mess that happens behind the scenes. And we have seen sometimes the Wales's kids acting up, and Catherine and William very much are the parents to them. I don't think that would be the situation with Harry and Meghan, but would Meghan attempt to do that thinking, oh, well, Harry said if the kids still have their HRHs, maybe they can be working royals and we can show them to the public and they'll love them. Or maybe the public just won't care. And I think that's the truth there in the matter. But we shall see whenever that happens. It could be the kids are still young. It could be that they're much older, but Harry and Meghan, their time in the royal household is gone. They will be at the funeral, I'm sure, but beyond that, probably nothing else.
Okay, well, this is how the Daily Telegraph revealed this story, Brittany. The leak is quite astonishing. Remembering the Daily Telegraph is the institutional newspaper in the UK of the British royal family. And this is all official detail from within Charles's new funeral plans. So this is the reporting from Victoria Ward. I have to point out, by the way, as well, she's the deputy royal editor of the Daily Telegraph, and she is known to have close links to Harry and Meghan and to be on the more favourable side when it comes to covering Harry and Meghan. I just like pointing that out so that everyone understands some of the biases, I guess, when we're looking at how an article might be positioned. So she writes, there has been increasing talk of olive branches and reconciliation between the King and Prince Harry. Much of it has been conveyed on the Duke's side, at least through television interviews, his emotion, anger and frustration on full display. From Buckingham Palace, there has been little said on the record, beyond the occasional frustrated shrug. Royal aides have kept their counsel, determined not to fan the flames of this deeply personal rift in public. But behind the scenes, the King is very much hopeful that he will be reunited with Prince Harry and that he might still build a relationship with his two California-based grandchildren. Opportunities would seem to present themselves at the next iteration of the Duke's Invictus Games, due to take place in Birmingham in 2027, and the King's 80th birthday celebrations the following year. Given that set-piece royal events are planned years in advance, it is possible to cast the net further into the unknown. Indeed, the Telegraph can reveal the King has factored not only the Duke, but the Duchess of Sussex and their two children, Prince Archie and Princess Elizabeth, into the heart of his funeral plans. Whenever the time comes, the monarch is adamant that his youngest son take his rightful place at the centre of his family, perhaps mindful of that final chance to create family harmony. The Telegraph understands that the Sussexes remained enveloped in the King's funeral plans at the highest level, with the Duke expected to walk side by side with his brother, by then the King, at the forefront of the sombre processions through the streets of central London. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex will be invited to take part in the family vigil during the lying in state at Westminster Hall and play a prominent role alongside the most senior royals during the funeral service. Arrangements have also been made for Archie and Lilibet to attend the funeral service at Westminster Abbey as well as the committal at St. George's Chapel in Windsor, should they wish. While the vast majority of the state funeral, codenamed as for all monarchs, Operation London Bridge, will look and feel very much like Elizabeth II's, the King has made some changes to the plans which are reflective of his own personal beliefs. His lifelong dedication to the environment is expected to be recognised with the incorporation of sustainable elements wherever possible. Meanwhile, the period of royal mourning will be reduced, bringing it into line with the period of national mourning. This will begin on the King's death and last until the day of the funeral, 10 or 11 days later. The King, who is still undergoing weekly cancer treatment, maintains a full work schedule with planning underway for engagements and events well into the future. The inclusion of the Sussexes in the plans, however, will prove a talking point. Their involvement, not just throughout the public-facing ceremonial elements, but behind the scenes in briefings and rehearsals, will avoid further rupturings with the couple. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are thought to have returned home on the day after Elizabeth II's funeral, feeling more ostracised than ever, their new status in the general hierarchy having been made abundantly clear. Barely on speaking terms with several of their closest relatives, the lack of communication between Buckingham Palace and their own office was blamed for various dramas, from a mistaken invitation to a state reception to confusion over military uniforms, not to mention differing versions of exactly when Prince Harry learned of his grandmother's death. At the King's coronation, 8 months later, the Duke cut a lonely, peripheral figure, bringing his family together by putting aside any differences and signing off plans that place the Sussexes at the heart of his funeral. The King will ensure that his final public act brings his family together. While the Duke has vowed never to bring his family back to the UK unless he can guarantee full police protection, they would automatically be enveloped into the official security operation for such a state occasion. Elizabeth II's death marked the first time in history that the grandchildren of a monarch had taken part in ceremonial events that followed. All 8 stood vigil around her coffin as she lay in state at Westminster Hall.
There's a philosophical question underneath all of this. Should someone who tried to burn the royal house down be invited to stand inside it during its darkest moment? Some argue yes, for dignity, legacy, and symbolism.
Now, Brittany, there is so much to say about this briefing. Firstly, why did the grandchildren play such a prominent role? Brittany, from Peter Phillips, the eldest, arguably the favourite at age 44, to James, Viscount 7, the youngest at 14. Why? Because the late Queen Elizabeth II had a deeply personal relationship with all 8 grandchildren. Indeed, Brittany, you could even argue that her relationship with her grandchildren in some ways was closer and more special than the relationship she had with her own children, because there was that separation really in the days when she was a young mum and forced to go out on the road because royal protocol was so different then. But Archie and Lilibet have zero relationship with Charles, and that's on Harry and Meghan. So that's the first thing I'd say about that. The second thing about this article, Brittany, that really infuriated me was that this idea that the communication around the funeral was in some way the palace getting it wrong. Whereas the reality is, Brittany, there was no trust with the Sussexes. There was no suggestion that they could be brought into the plans, because at that point, and even now, Brittany, we know they're leaking to all of the American media. The trust was smashed. And the trust was smashed as a result of Harry and Meghan's actions. So that's my view on this article. A lot of which seems to, by the way, come from, I would argue, the sort of position of Harry and Meghan. But please, over to you now. What's your take on it all?
I mean, it's a really fascinating piece, and it's interesting that they decided to, let's say, leak this to the press. And it really is sort of, you could say, a favorable piece towards Harry and Meghan, and really an olive branch, because Charles is, I think, very much desperate to try to have this relationship with Harry. And even if it's his final act, even after he's passed away, trying to get the brothers to reconcile, I completely understand from a father's perspective that is what he wants. But the reality remains that Harry and Meghan are the ones who broke everything. Harry and Meghan are the ones who are the bad actors in this situation. And in order for trust to be rebuilt at all, for any type of reconciliation to occur, number one, it has to be Harry and Meghan going on, I would say, bended knee to the royal family and apologizing for at least some of their behavior. They don't even recognize the things that they've done wrong, especially Harry. You see him in that BBC interview, and he just seemingly has no idea how everything went so south. He has no idea why he doesn't have a relationship with his father, and it's because of Harry. Harry writing a book, a Netflix series. Like he sort of kind of acknowledged that a bit, but Harry's the one who broke everything. And Harry's the only one who can truly fix it by acknowledging where he went wrong and going to and apologizing to his father, his brother. That's like the only way fences will be mended. And when it comes to Meghan, Charles can try whatever he wants. Meghan will never be satisfied. She does not care enough about Harry, his family, his relationships. Like that's why she blew them all up in the first place. She only wants Harry to serve her. And so this idea that somehow an olive branch will mend things with her as well, unless it comes with Cartier jewelry and a bunch of money attached, she's not going to care either way. And so while I admire Charles for wanting this, the reality is it's not going to happen.
Others say no, because it sends the wrong message, that betrayal has no consequence. And then there's a third camp. Let her come, but don't let her near the spotlight. This story isn't just about a funeral. It's about legacy. It's about how a royal family handled betrayal, forgiveness, and public scrutiny in the age of social media and streaming deals. It's about whether Charles' final act will be remembered as graceful or naive. And more than anything, it's about the tension between tradition and modernity. Meghan Markle's inclusion is a symbol, and symbols matter in the monarchy. So, what do you think? Should Meghan be there? Is King Charles making the right call? Or is this a massive misstep? If you think tradition still matters, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe for more bold, no-fluff royal commentary.